Hello everyone, welcome to Our Town. I'm Jill Hindley Lawrence and I am here with a very important guest today. We have Kevin Kalkut with us for an interesting conversation as he is running as a candidate for state representative 9th Norfolk District.
That's correct. Thank you so much for having me, Jill. And I just want to put a quick plug out there. Thank you so much to NCTV. Everything that everybody does here to get information out to the community and keep everybody abreast of what's going on, it is unbelievable and incredibly helpful. So thank you to you and everybody here.
Thank you. Well, I am just a small part. It's the group here, the employees are wonderful, and what they do, as you mentioned, is they do a really nice job of spreading themselves out in town and really covering the important things. So yes, so thank you for that. This is a great conversation to have because this is your first time running for statewide office as a candidate, but you are familiar for us in Norfolk as a resident of Norfolk. As a member, on the select board, and as a former chair of that. So the leadership there that we know you for. If you want to start with that, about your experience. Experience. Thank you.
So back in 2017, my wife and I were looking for a place to settle down and start our family. We had just moved from Chicago to Massachusetts. We were getting closer to our families on the East Coast. And when we were looking for places where we wanted to set up roots, we wanted to find something that had some rural appeal to it while still being accessible for the city, for work.
Right.
So eventually we found Norfolk and we fell in love with Norfolk. We loved it here. So we moved here in about 2017. When I had first moved into our new house in our first neighborhood, it was our first time owning a home and all that fun stuff that comes along with that.
Yeah.
We heard from neighbors that there was a concern about development in town, about affordable housing, and how there was a lack of a communicated plan from their perspective, and they were worried about what that meant for residential neighborhoods.
Yes.
So I took that and I said, hey, look, maybe there's something I can offer that conversation. Maybe some of my professional experience might be able to lend itself to those discussions, and I might be able to help out.
Yeah.
So I decided to run for the planning board.
Oh, okay. So right off the bat.
Off the bat.
Which is a smart decision because of the experience you'd had and because of the concerns that you heard.
Exactly. So I ran for the planning board, was lucky enough to win a seat there, and that was my introduction into municipal government.
Okay.
It took me about a year to realize that those conversations about high-level strategy don't necessarily happen at the planning board stage. Granted, they do a lot of work on site plan review and more of the short-term initiatives and some of the bylaws and things of those natures. But high level, talking about long-term strategy and growth, that was happening at the select board.
Right.
So after my first year on the planning board, I actually ran for the select board because that's really where I wanted to have my impact.
I see.
I was then, again, very fortunate. The voters of Norfolk put me into that role as well. And I had the opportunity there to really start engaging in some initiatives that would loop the community back in and get them more engaged in what was going on in local government. Yeah. So between doing office hours or doing a cable show to help summarize all of the meetings in town, or putting out posts on social media, something that everybody tried to stay away from because it is a very dark place sometimes.
It can be.
But it also is a main communication medium for a lot of people. So I started engaging with people on Facebook. And while there was a small percentage of the engagements that weren't so great,
of course,
I think there was a great value to the community to be able to get some of the information disseminated in that fashion.
Yeah, and I've seen your posts a lot. You put yourself out there. And I think that's appreciated by people who either don't have time to, are not watching every meeting or attending. Yeah, so that was I think that was a great move to do to help the residents here.
And then, going into the main reason why we started this whole endeavor, we had the opportunity to take a big proactive action to be able to accommodate for growth in Norfolk by taking on the initiative of rezoning town center.
Right.
Now that was a big project. We had support from MAPC. We got to work directly with the principal planner. We had about 3 different boards and committees all engaged. We set up a separate B1 working committee, which I was on. And it was a 2.5-year process where we were working with landowners and residents and just about everybody under the sun. And we took this delta on expectations from that group, from this down to this over 2.5 years, to the point where we finally were able to get some proactive zoning changes done for town center at the spring 21 town meeting. So I felt like we were able to achieve some of that grounding that we were looking to accomplish when we first started getting involved. But now all these other doors started opening up and these possibilities to be able to enhance engagement and interaction and for more people to get involved. So it really, just for me, has been an incredible experience to be able to bring people together and focus in on some actionable shared solutions for some of the most common problems that we all face.
Right. right. That's terrific. Well, thank you for that. And it is, I feel like, the local advocacy, the local leadership is what really drives people, what matters to people, right? That seems to what matters is what happens locally, right? They say. So for you to be able to start with planning board and then, then select board and really be able to sink your teeth into a town, a small town. And you are a resident of Norfolk. So I know I want to touch on that with you, with your family, but I thought maybe first you've told us a little bit about your elected experience on the boards in our town. How about your other experience for professionally,
Sure.
and how that is relevant going forward?
Absolutely, yeah. So I actually took a little bit of a different path into politics. I actually went to school to be a chef. I went into the culinary arts program at Johnson & Wales. I love to cook. It's one of my favorite things, and it's probably the main reason why my wife actually decided to stick with me. But it did work out, and she loves it. But I went to school initially for culinary arts. I figured out a couple of years in that while I really loved doing it, it wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life in a professional capacity. So I transitioned into a hospitality management program and started working in some of the front-end operations of the largest hospitality organizations in the world.
Oh, wow.
Right out of school, I went to Chicago with my then girlfriend, now wife. And I started working at some of the largest hotels on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. 1,400 rooms, lots of operations, huge banquets, 100,000 square feet of meeting space. It was an incredible experience to manage huge teams and try to work on some complex issues in that environment.
Right, it's a high pressure environment.
It absolutely was.
And you were you said front where you were dealing with
I was doing engagement, working with guests most often than not. And one of the things that was really instilled with me during that time was this whole idea of having a servant's heart, right? So you were told that every engagement that you have with a guest, it should be memorable, and they should walk away feeling completely satisfied with that engagement. And I feel like carrying that over from my work back then to my work now, where now I work for a technology company in Boston that works with restaurants. I've been able to bring that forward, and now in public service, I think it's even more applicable to be able to have that kind of approach to dealing with constituent issues. So I feel like all of that has lent itself to my ability to be able to connect with people across the political spectrum, across the opinion spectrum, across every spectrum here in town, and has been one of the main reasons why I think we've been able to be so effective.
Yes. All right. Well, that's great. Okay, I'm glad to know, because didn't know. I know you had a long career, and that it was hospitality at first, and now you've kind of evolved now to really, like you said, you've met a lot of different types, and you've worked with a lot of different types,
Absolutely.
And that is a great skill. That's a great skill. Okay, so your family. Now that we've talked about career, you're a resident here. You've got 3 boys, and so tell us a little bit. How does that impact of having a young family, bring you to this where you are now?
Yeah, so we do have 3 boys, Colin, Ryan, and Owen. They are ages 10, 7, and 5. Colin is going into 5th grade, Ryan is going into 2nd grade, and Owen is going into kindergarten.
So the third one.
The party is coming up one way or the other.
It's a party.
Yes.
That first day when they're all in school. What? Are they all in public schools here?
They are.
Yes,
yeah.
HOD and FK.
Actually, what's funny is that next year we'll have 1 child in the middle school, 1 child in Freeman Kennedy, and 1 child in HOD, so we can hit the trifecta of Norfolk Public Education.
You'll be just doing laps, loops around. Okay, well that's cool. So so they'll be moving on to the regional school district, the oldest. Okay, Colin, right?
Yep.
All right. So and you've got the 2 of your working parents, so you definitely so you relate. I think it seems you relate well with a lot of families that are in that same boat. Where
Absolutely.
they're juggling.
There's many working families in this district, and I've already talked about my position working remotely for a technology company in Boston. My wife is actually a pediatric neuropsychologist.
That's right. Yeah.
So she's been doing a lot of amazing work, albeit really tough work over the course of the last few years, especially with the pandemic and doing telehealth with children and talking through some of the issues that caused. So we both have very full-time jobs, very full-time schedules, and I think that a lot of people relate with that, especially in the district as we go door to door and speak to people.
Yeah. Okay, well that's great. So that's right. So the door to door, you've been doing that for several months, right?
Well, we've been
Or
doing,
a
so
little bit.
we've had a very strategic approach to campaigning, and it's really based off of what I found effective when I ran for select board 2 times and for planning board. I think one-on-one interactions are the best way to be able to connect with voters so that they feel comfortable sharing their perspective, where they're coming from, what's important to them.
Right.
So we took a little bit less of the push early on from the brand marketing aspect,
Right.
waving signs or whatever the case may be, and focus more on meetings.
Conversations or meetings.
Yeah, we've had meet and greet events in each one of the 6 towns at this point. We've gone to local bars, restaurants, or coffee shops and sat down for 2.5 hours and asked people to come there. If you want to talk, let's talk. Let's do it in a casual format while we're supporting our small businesses.
Right. No,
it was
I
a
love that.
perfect way to be able to introduce ourselves to the communities that maybe didn't know us that well.
Right.
And as we progressed on, yes, we've been adding in more canvassing, more phone banking,
Okay.
more of the more traditional approaches to campaigning. But in the beginning, it was really important to me to primarily start with, looking somebody eye to eye, having a conversation, and really getting a gauge for what was most important to the voters of the district.
Yeah, and being a good listener, which I think is what, again, that's an important skill, not just for campaigning, but obviously for the job.
Absolutely, right.
And so that's great because
Yeah.
that's what you're able to do is you're able to show that you're a good listener, and that you'll take it all in and consider people's views and different views. So just while we're in, I know we want to talk a little bit about your platforms, but let's just talk about the 9th Norfolk District and
Sure.
the towns, so that because we're hoping that this is NCTV, which is Norfolk Community TV, but we're hoping that we can also put this, on each of the towns so that we
Absolutely.
can share the conversation. So tell us the towns again, list them out for us.
Sure. So the district really is encompassed by all of Norfolk, all of Plainville, and all of Rentham, the 3 KP
the
towns.
KP towns, okay.
And then there are 3 other towns where it's just 1 or 2 districts.
that's
So in
right.
Millis you have 1 district, in Medfield you have 2 districts, and in Walpole you have 1 district.
One,
So it is
okay.
6 towns in total,
Yes.
but only 3 of them are the full town.
Okay, all right. So it's that I didn't realize it was sliced up that much. Okay, that's just how it is.
Yep.
And is that Kevin? Is that 9th Norfolk District stayed the same for many years, or is it redistricted a little bit?
So during the last redistricting effort, there was some slight changes done to borders and streets and little things here and there,
right.
but I don't think there was any drastic changes to whole districts or entire towns being taken out, much like you saw with our state Senate district, which was
Right.
drastically changed.
That was changed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So great. So 9th Norfolk District. You mentioned the towns, and like I said, hopefully people in each of those towns or the part of towns can be able to watch our conversation and get to know you and hear a little bit more. Okay. So we've got sort of the who you are, where you came from, about your family, and let's touch on a little bit of platform. Do you want to talk about the special interest? A little bit,
Sure.
or do you want to talk about, some of your platforms that I've seen,
No, that's a great point to talk about special interests,
Okay.
especially as we talk about our approach to the campaign. One of the things that we've always talked about has been the influence of special interests on the legislature's ability to actually get policy pushed through. One of the things that we hear commonly when we go and have our interactions with individuals is, you're running as a Democrat. We have a bunch of Democrats in the State House, yet we
Right.
still can't seem to pass common sense progressive policy.
Right.
So what are you going to do differently? And my common response is the influence of special interests is what restricts us the most from being able to get these kinds of things done.
Right.
So right off the bat, our campaign said no money from PACs, no money from special interest groups, no money from lobbyists. And we've stayed pretty solid on that going through our campaign up to this point. We have not accepted a dollar from any of those kinds of sources.
yeah.
And so we feel by doing that, the only people that we will be representing and the
Beholden.
interest that will be
Yeah.
following on Beacon Hill will be that of the voters in this district.
Right.
So that's been very important to our campaign right from the start.
And it's unique, so that's good. And as you mentioned, that lobby, that special interest issue is a issue not only with like a statewide office, but also like national. I mean, it's just, I feel like it's pervasive.
Campaign finance as a whole right now is in need of desperate need of reform.
Yeah.
Correct.
So great. So you guys haven't. So that's something, and I'm sure that we'll put up the website clearly. Where people can go and learn more. But I'm sure that's highlighted there.
Absolutely.
Because that makes you it makes you stand out. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you touched on that. So switching gears a bit, you have a couple platforms that are very important to you.
I do.
And one of them I know is, I think, is very current, very, very much at the front of people's minds, which is mental health.
Yes.
And I think both children and adults, across the Commonwealth in the 9th Norfolk District. So if you would touch on that a little bit and how you feel about it and what you think, what your vision is.
Sure. So, a lot of this is driven, I spoke before about my wife's profession as a pediatric neuropsychologist, and hearing some of her frustrations about the barriers that exist to being able to connect individuals who are severely in need of care to the services they require to be able to function. So we started talking to people about how that impacted them on a day-to-day basis. And the feedback we got was across the political spectrum. There is no partisan divide on this. Everybody is in agreement that in Massachusetts, where we have such a developed healthcare system, it seems like mental health services kind of fell behind.
Yeah.
And you saw it in the last session. We're very happy that the legislature did finally pass and Governor Baker did sign an act addressing the barriers to care for mental health.
Yes.
But that was just the first step. There are still many things that we need to get done. Primarily, from my position, the focus should be on the facilities, identifying personnel that we need to staff them and having beds available for people to be able to go to them should they require those types of services. We no longer can sit in this world where you have an individual who is in severe need of care sitting in an ER for days at a time because there was just nowhere for them to go.
Right.
So from my perspective, I am very grateful that we took the first step in passing this piece of legislation in last session, and I really do look forward to supporting further efforts to be able to bolster mental health as a whole.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great. So, yes, I'm glad that passed as well. Do you want to touch on I know we kind of talked about the children and adults kind of all together. I mean, the pandemic definitely put a wrench into that, and that it exacerbated a problem that was already there.
Right.
But it seemed that your thoughts are that we have to bolster the availability of services. Opioid. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Sure.
I know that's something that is a very near and dear in Massachusetts.
Absolutely.
And of course, we have a couple hot places locally in Rentham that are working on that from the ground, right from the grassroots level.
Yeah. Yeah, so it ties very much into the mental health platform, right?
Yeah.
Substance abuse as a whole, recovery as a whole are two things that are very big right now and need attention within the State House. So if you look at locally, right, we have organizations here within our communities that act as a catalyst to be able to provide services to people. Like, for instance, here in Norfolk, we have Jen Levine and the SAFE Coalition who have been doing amazing work. And I had the opportunity to go and have a meeting with them to hear about some of the impediments they have to being able to ensure that people are getting the services that they need.
Right.
And some of it ties to funding and ensuring that we have the appropriate amount of funding going into these local coalitions. But I also think there's an awareness aspect to it, right?
Yes,
and sitting as a select board member, I know that there are certain instances where we could have been promoting that a little bit more. We could have been working in partnership a little bit more to ensure that people knew these things were available to them.
Yeah.
So I had encouraged her to come to some select board meetings around the district, identify what they do, how they do it. Each municipality is going to be getting a portion of the settlement from the opioid industry, from the lawsuit. And in Norfolk, we identified that we'd like to dedicate some of that money to the SAFE Coalition, and we do hope that the rest of the communities do the same thing.
Right. Okay. All right. Good. Well, that's great to hear. All right. So another platform, another important topic would be the early education, childcare.
Yes.
Which I know again is and you are as a working, a parent with two working parents and three boys that have been, younger than elementary school for a while. You've had to deal with this head on. You've had to
Absolutely.
So, what are your thoughts on that, and what are your plans?
Sure. So one of the things that we've read has been, the national recommended number for how much a household should be dedicating to childcare expenses should be about 7% of the household income. That's about where you should be if you want to comfortably be able to accommodate for all of the other needs associated to running a household with kids, right? In Massachusetts, that number somewhere hovers between 21% and 46% in certain areas, making Massachusetts one of the top states in the country in terms of the cost of childcare.
Wow.
And aside from the cost, there is a distinct availability issue. Like, people do not have access to quality care. And in some cases, they have to make sacrifices, and that just should not be the case. So when we talk about the kinds of things that are influencing our workforce issues and having people be out there, I would say you start looking at childcare. If people are taking a look at childcare and saying, hey, wow, I guess childcare is about 25% of our income, why would I go to work? Why wouldn't I just stay home to be able to offset that? Especially during a time where, during the pandemic,
The kids
a lot of people got used to being home. So primarily, I would want to find a way to be able to offset some of those costs, get availability back where it needs to be, bolster the workforce and specialists who are able to work in these environments, so that we can ensure that everybody has access to high quality care.
Right. And so, wow, 7% is what the experts that, or what's sort of the number that seems like a reasonable number that I'm sure they came up with that in a mathematical way, but you're saying that Massachusetts just blows that right up. 20 is the low end,
And there are fantastic organizations like the Common Star Coalition that has been working on comprehensive legislation to be able to address these types of things. So I very much eagerly look forward to working with organizations like that and other legislators to be able to find a way to bridge that gap, that very distinct gap for Massachusetts residents.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Anything else, other topics that you want to touch on?
Sure.
That you might, a couple things that are just very important to you and that are important to the voters.
Absolutely. We came in with a platform that was really centered on local support. After serving on the select board and working with state organizations on initiatives and working through the community to be able to get large projects done, there was an aspect of partnership that may have been an opportunity for us to be able to bolster a little bit more. And when we started coming into this campaign, we wanted to emphasize to people that our primary focus is going to be a partner for our local communities and all of the local communities. And so, past that, as we started talking to people, we were able to build out this platform of these issues, like hearing about mental health, hearing about child care costs, hearing about concerns about the environment, the Roe Act, things of these nature were so important to people. So we've just been adding them on as we went, and we've been doing our research, finding bills that we can jump on to support on day one, finding legislators who have been pushing for these things to get their feedback on the most effective ways to be able to address it. So as you go down the list and highlight funding for our schools and education, or going down the list and identifying climate control policies, or going down the list and talking about ways that we can ensure that unfunded mandates that are negatively impacting our municipalities are addressed, I think that having somebody with local experience be part of that conversation at the decision point on Beacon Hill would be an incredible impact to ensure that municipalities are getting the support that they need.
No, I think so, and you have been entrenched in the in a positive way as a member of the select board and as a chair. It's nice. It's so nice when you can take someone that's been a local leader and then expand that and then have be able to be involved in the statewide decision making.
Absolutely. I mean, and it doesn't just stop at the local level too. We were lucky enough to be appointed as Norfolk's representative on the Norfolk County Advisory Board 2 years ago, with the idea that somebody who had such experience working with municipal budgets would be a fantastic representative to have in those forums to talk about county level budgets, especially during a time when the ARPA funds were coming out and the county was in charge of dispersing them. So now I've been serving on the County Advisory Board as well for 2 years.
Oh, wow. Great.
So I get a nice little mix of local, county, and state level government over the course of the last 6 months.
I guess so, so you must, your phone must, I can't imagine. It's a lot. That's a lot. But you clearly are a people person. You seem like a people person.
Yes.
And I think that's a pretty important part of the job. And like I said, it sounds like listening, being a good listener and really letting people sometimes just want to be heard,
100%. Absolutely.
So, great. Well, we got to know you a bit, you're biographically, and we got to hear the platforms that are most near and dear, and how you're going to address those for the voters in the ninth Norfolk district. Would you, Kevin, before we wrap up, would you touch on the primary, the dates, and the voting, and how, kind of those details about how people can vote on
Sure.
September 6th,
Absolutely.
which is the our primary. So I'll let you take over. And
So
give us that
actually,
info.
voting has already started. Right?
Okay.
Anybody who requested
Yeah.
a mail-in ballot has likely gotten it by this point, and they are able to submit those ballots right up until Election
That's
Day.
right, yeah.
You can apply up until August 29th to be able to receive
Okay.
that ballot and be able to vote by mail.
August 29th, you can apply.
Yep.
Okay.
The next stage of voting will begin towards the end of August, August 27th. I know here in Norfolk, we're going to start early in-person voting, where you would
Oh, okay,
typically be
that's
going
right.
to your town hall or wherever your town clerk is set up. I would advise everybody to please check with your local town clerk, because
Yeah.
I'm only speaking for Norfolk right now.
yeah.
And that'll be going until September 1st,
Oh, okay. So the first one was mail-in.
mail-in voting.
First category.
Yep.
And you can apply for that all the way to the August 29th. Second one is early voting.
Is early in-person voting, that's right,
Voting.
yep.
And then obviously we've also got the day of.
So then if
Which
you're
is my favorite.
so motivated, you can come join
Yeah.
us. We'll be at the polls
Yeah.
talking to voters. But that is going to be on September 6th.
Yep. Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay. The primary election for state representative candidate for the 9th Norfolk district. Okay, so we've got that figured out. So yes, so the people from towns, check with your town clerk on those dates, because they could change a little bit, right? Or they
I think
could,
there's a little bit of variability.
a little bit
in
of
there, right?
variability. Okay, great. Well, as a fellow resident, or Norfolkian, is that how we say it? Or fellow resident of Norfolk, it's been wonderful to chat with you today.
Thank you so much, Jill. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're glad to have you here. Like I said, we're gonna see if we can send this out to all the towns, the 9th Norfolk district, so people can get to meet you, get to know you. And the website is right on, so that they can look that up. And certainly, the best way to get in touch with you would be right through the website, through your website.
Also, we have a number of mediums that individuals can get in
Okay,
touch
yeah.
with us. We'll have our website there. We'll have our email address. We have a number of people can text if they want something a little bit easier.
Okay.
We're about to set up a pilot program with carrier pigeons that we just let out, and they'll find you. We'll do everything to make ourselves available to the voters.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, great. That's great. So, I think that any last thoughts? Any last words?
I will just share one quote that I
Yes,
found
please
during
do.
the course of this whole thing that's been
Yes.
really impactful for
Oh,
us.
great.
It was by Harry Emerson Fosdick, and it said, "Democracy is based upon the conviction that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people."
Oh, wow.
So when you look at kind of our path to get here and the things that
Yeah.
we've gone through and the careers that we've had, those aren't typically what you would see in a politician. But I do believe that we have the opportunity to do extraordinary things together. So I greatly look forward to the opportunity.
Oh, great. Well, that's a nice quote. That's a really good, very compelling quote about democracy. It makes me proud to be an American.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Kevin. Well, Kevin Kalkut, candidate for state representative, state rep, our 9th Norfolk District. Thank you for being here today and having this great, just like kind of a community conversation to get to know
Absolutely.
you. I loved it. Enjoyed it tremendously. And on behalf of NCTV, I am Jill Hinley Lawrence, and thank you for watching.